Back to the daily grind, and y'all know we gotta talk about this. But before we do, make sure you hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
And welcome to the Bellator 195 preview and predictions. This event's going to be held in Oklahoma, and it's going to feature a main event bantamweight Bellator title fight between Darrion Caldwell, the current Bellator bantamweight champion, and Leandro Higo, one of the current top contenders over in the bantamweight division. Leandro Higo's 18-3, and he's going to be challenging for his first time, I believe, at the Bellator Gold. Going to be an interesting main event. We'll cover the main event and the co-main event after we get into the other couple of fights on the main card. It's going to be an entire main card preview and prediction. So with that being said, let's jump right into the first fight of the night between William Joplin and Juan Archuleta. Now, this is actually going to be an interesting fight, although it might be pretty one-sided, and I'll explain why. William Joplin, as you can see, I predicted to lose this fight. He's 15-14 overall, so he's essentially 500. He's lost a fight for every time that he's won a fight. He's also 39 years old. He's 1-2 in his last 3 fights. He's coming off of a first-round submission win in the Kansas City Fighting Alliance. So he lost 2 fights, and then he went and fought in a lesser organization, and he's coming off of a W. Now he's in Bellator, and he's going to be fighting Juan Archuleta. Juan Archuleta is 17-1, and he was the 4-division champion and King of the Cage. Now that's significant, honestly, in any fighting organization, especially one that's as, you know, a lot of people have heard of King of the Cage. Even if you don't keep up with King of the Cage, you've at least heard of it. So, I mean, compared to all of the other organizations, the XFLs and the, you know, LFRs and the KCFAs and the, you know, King of the Cage is one that you actually hear more often. So to be a 4-division champion in King of the Cage, yeah, it's clearly different than being a 4-division champion in Bellator or the UFC. But that's still pretty significant to only have lost 1 time in your professional mixed martial arts career and to be successful in 4 different weight classes. So Juan Archuleta's the younger fighter here. He's only 30 years old. He was the 4-division champion and King of the Cage. And he's fighting a guy that's, you know, 15-14. So I'm picking Juan Archuleta to get the W here. I wouldn't be surprised if he was probably a pretty heavy favorite. But this is just one thing that's interesting to me. If you remember, Conor McGregor was a champ before becoming the champ in the UFC. He was also a 2-division champion, and I believe the organization was King of the Cage. Conor McGregor, you know, won 2 titles, the featherweight and lightweight title in King of the Cage, went to the UFC, and then won 2 titles in the UFC, and he's now the Conor McGregor we all know today. So with that being said, it's just interesting both of these guys came from King of the Cage. It just makes me curious about the level of competition over in King of the Cage. Are they pretty high level, or, you know, are they like the C League? Or, I mean, Conor McGregor earlier in his career was a champ over there. This Juan Archuleta guy, I haven't really heard much about him. I guess he's been having an actually pretty successful career over at King of the Cage. But with that being said, yeah, he was the 4-division champion. So with that, he's only lost 1 time in his career. We'll see if William Joplin can get it done, but I'm picking Juan Archuleta. So now we'll move into the next fight of the night. Christina Williams versus Emily Ducote. That's going to be, and I don't know if that's how you pronounce her last name. I mean, I do know that Emily is from Oklahoma. Both of these girls are from Oklahoma, so they're both going to be hometown, so I don't know if anyone's going to have a hometown advantage. But either way, Emily Ducote or Ducati, I don't know how to say that last. I'm just going to call her Emily. Either way, Emily is the younger, more experienced fighter in this fight. Emily is 6-3 overall. She's 2-1 in her last 3 fights, coming off of a loss to the current Bellator flyweight champion Ilima-Lei Macfarlane in a fight for the inaugural 125-pound belt. So in that sense, Emily has fought for the Bellator title, and it was a rematch. She already fought Ilima before that fight. That wasn't for the title, but still, she's been in there with some pretty high-level Bellator girls, including the current champion, and she's going to be fighting Christina Williams, who's 1-0 as a professional. She's only got 1 professional fight, but you might remember that professional fight because in that fight, Christina Williams beat up Heather Hardy pretty bad in her Bellator debut. So this is going to be an interesting fight. Christina Williams is going to have a height and reach advantage in this fight, but Emily's going to have the experience advantage, you know, and the youth advantage. So it's going to be a dope fight. But Christina Williams, although she's only 1-0, is said to have had multiple amateur fights, and she's also either a brown or a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. So even though she's only 1-0, she's no slouch. But I'm going to be going with the younger and more experienced Emily, who's going to have the height and reach disadvantage in this fight. But Williams' only win was over Heather Hardy. And if you remember Heather Hardy's fight after that, it was versus Anna Hulatin, and it looked pretty amateurish. It looked like two boxers that transitioned to MMA. You know, it was a pretty, like, essentially like a snooze fest, if you recall, or just looked pretty amateurish. Heather Hardy's most recent fight. So I can't put too much stock into that win that Christina Williams has. And Emily Ducote, she's, you know, got 6 professional MMA wins, and she's been in there with the current champ. So I'm just picking Emily to get this W in this fight. Now we can move into the co-main event of the night. I do believe the co-main event and the main event have the potential to not be the most exciting mixed martial arts fights, as you're going to have some high-level wrestlers looking to win the fight, which means if you're trying to win and you're a high-level wrestler, it might involve holding your opponent down and trying to smother him and win that way. Even, you know, doing what you have to do to get the win. So Joe Warren is 41 years old. He's 15-6 overall. He got into MMA a little later for a fighter. He's 2-1 in his last 3 fights, though, coming off of a win over Steve Garcia, and his loss was via majority decision in a rematch in a title fight versus the former Bellator champion Eduardo Dantas. So this is Joe Warren's no slouch. He's a very high-level wrestler, but he's up there in age. He's going to be fighting Joe Taminglo, who's 23-8. So Joe Taminglo is going to be the younger, more experienced fighter in this fight. Joe Taminglo is 1-2 in his last 3 fights. His wins coming over the current champion Darrion Caldwell, but since then he's lost 2 in a row. One of those fights being a rematch to Darrion Caldwell, so Darrion Caldwell redeemed himself. And then most recently, Joe Taminglo also lost to Leandro Higo. So his most 2 recent losses are both to the guys fighting in the main event, Joe Taminglo's. Now the thing about Joe Taminglo is he's from Guam, I believe. A lot of his first fights in his career were from the Pacific Extreme Fighting Championships. And the thing about that, if I recall correctly, is, you know, there's not a lot of grappling or wrestling over there. So in his fights, he might be able to be dominated by the wrestling or controlled by a high-level wrestler, which is what Joe Warren is. In Joe Warren's last fight, he essentially, you know, was charging across the octagon, going for the takedown, trying to win it that way, and that's what he did. So I think Joe Warren's probably going to win this fight with his wrestling, and if not, Joe Taminglo will probably have the striking advantage. But I think Joe Warren's wrestling that he should have in his back pocket will get him a win here, and he might retire on this win. I'm not sure. He's already 41 years old, but we'll see what happens. He might get a win here and want another crack at the title. Who knows? Both of these guys have fought former Bellator champions. So I'm picking Joe Warren to get the W here, even at 41 years of age. Even though, you know, in the last fight, Emily is the younger, more experienced fighter. Here, Joe Taminglo is the younger, more experienced fighter. But I'm picking Joe Warren because his skills is wrestling. You know what I'm saying? It's a little different than Christina Williams, who, you know, only had 1 professional fight. So I am going to pick Joe Warren to get this fight here. Now in the main event of the evening, Leandro Higo versus Darrion Caldwell. I was going back and forth essentially before I really dove into the research. Leandro Higo, he's 18-3 overall, nicknamed Pitbull, but not one of those Pitbull brothers. Leandro Higo is 1-1 in his last 2 fights. His most recent fights were against his most experienced opponents, where he lost to former champion Eduardo Dantas in a split decision, which Ligo missed weight, and then he won his most recent fight versus Joe Taminglo. So Leandro Higo, he's fought 2 pretty experienced Bellator guys, and then his most 2 recent fights, and, you know, he lost 1-1. Darrion Caldwell, on the other hand, only has 1 professional loss, and he redeemed himself in that loss. He lost to Joe Taminglo, I believe, via submission in the 3rd round. He got caught. You know, he's a high-level wrestler, so, you know, he was probably dominating the fight via wrestling, got caught in a submission, but then he came back in the next fight, and if I remember correctly, dominated it, and, you know, didn't get caught in that submission. So he redeemed himself, and then he went on to win the belt with his wrestling as well, Darrion Caldwell. So I'm expecting Darrion Caldwell's high-level wrestling to come in here and probably get the win versus Leandro Higo, who's won, I believe, like 12 fights via submission. So Leandro Higo is probably going to be looking for that submission, but Darrion Caldwell is going to be looking to avoid the submission and probably win the fight off points or takedowns. So I'm going to pick the wrestlers to succeed at Bellator 195 in the main event and co-main event. But I will admit, if one of these guys in the co-main event or main event have the best chance to lose, it's probably the champion Darrion Caldwell, as I believe Leandro Higo's jiu-jitsu is going to be have him more prepared to deal with Darrion Caldwell, you know, as a wrestler, you know what I'm saying? So with that being said, we'll see what happens, but I am going to pick Joe Warren and Darrion Caldwell to get the W's in the main event and co-main event of Bellator 195. Let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell right next to it so you're notified every time I upload a video. I'm out.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOWG.